My name is Linda Cirulli-Burton, and welcome to this channel named Above the Battleground ACIM. Well, I have just finished reading for the very first time in my very mature life Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And frankly, I was flabbergasted. Like many of you, I've seen the stage production multiple times, and I've enjoyed it multiple times. But I noticed that there's a difference. When I'm in the audience and I'm watching Ebenezer Scrooge work out his redemptive plan, I really am watching another person's journey. It touches me, but I'm going to say, not in the way that actually reading the words. Actually reading it plunged me into the story, and it became my story. And then by definition, if you believe there's only one of us here, it becomes our story. And so indeed, I was flabbergasted. So I wanted to share through the prism of spirituality what it was that I could observe in Scrooge that also became my/our journey. Above the Battleground is based on the teachings of a spiritual self-study path known as A Course in Miracles. I've been a student of A Course in Miracles since 1992 and recently became obsessed with the idea of sharing some of the lessons so that they would go deeper within me and hopefully be of some benefit to you. In A Course in Miracles, Jesus is addressing our mind, specifically the decision maker who will choose between the right mind and the wrong mind, between the mind of ego and the mind of spirit, between illusion and reality, between fear and love. And right at the beginning of A Christmas Carol, there's such an obvious wrong mind, right mind scenario. And of course, Ebenezer Scrooge is really locked in that ego mind. He is bitter, he is angry, he is nasty, closed up, rigid. He is all of those things. His one and only employee is Bob Cratchit, right? And according to custom, everyone should have the day off on Christmas Day, but get paid. And this annoys Ebenezer to the point of craziness. He's a man of money, of ledgers, of balance sheets, and he believes that this is so very wrong. Well, while he is immersed in his ego mind, the door opens and in comes the right mind, the mind of spirit and love and joy. And it is Ebenezer's own nephew, Freddie. And Freddie is asking his uncle, and Freddie is very pleasant, very strong, never dips into anger or annoyance at his uncle. He wants his uncle to spend Christmas Day to dine with Freddie and his family. And he is light and joy. And of course, I'm going to tell you, Scrooge is downright mean, but he can't affect Freddie. And once again, I am reminded how in A Course in Miracles is training us not to be at the effect of someone else's darkness, right? And boy, I tell you, Freddie just does that perfectly. So what I really believe happened is that that there was a little tiny willingness in him. Not a lot, but a little. And I think that Freddie, being the light-bearing person that he was, the light-bearing mind, I think was a reminder to Scrooge of another way, okay? And I believe that opened up Scrooge to Jacob Marley. So Jacob Marley they were peas in a pod. They worked together. They were both scoundrels in the world of money, very precise, very exact, very cold. And Marley was his partner until he had died 7 years before. So he shows up, and Marley's ghost is such a shock to Scrooge. But Marley has chains, and he is obviously a spirit, having left the physical world 7 years before, and he is there to warn Ebenezer that if you continue the way that you are, you will end up like me. And I mean, the chains had, money boxes, ledgers, everything chained to him, and he was there to warn Scrooge. And he said to Scrooge, he goes, there will be 3 ghosts that will show up. The ghost of Christmas past, present, and yet to come. You must do what the ghosts ask you to do. You must do it. And so he leaves, and Scrooge is ready. I think he's ready. And the first one shows up, the first ghost, the ghost of Christmas past. Now, I'm going to tell you that reading the book it was very clear that this ghost was gentle, was very, very kind. I think we could go so far as to say that this ghost was loving. And what he did, and I think for those of us who have seen the stage production, it's almost as though this particular part nails it for us. Because Scrooge, I believe for the first time ever, as this bitter old man is going to face his own darkness. And I've often said that we can't make progress, spiritual progress, if we stuff our bad stuff in our unconscious. It must come up for the healing. And so what happens is that Ebenezer is going to look at himself with the ghost of Christmas past, and what he sees is so moving. He sees himself as a little boy, poor, lonely, very lonely. The other classmates have gone on to their homes, but he is by himself. And we react to this. We do. And then fast forward, and he's a young man, and a lovely girl by the name of Belle comes to tell him that she no longer believes that he is the person that he used to be. She no longer feels loved by him. That instead of loving her, he now loves his money. He loves his balance sheets. He's changed. And so she walks out on him. Now, I'm going to tell you that he looked at the pain and the darkness, with a very gentle ghost. And I think he could feel the compassion that came from the ghost and then emanated from Scrooge. Scrooge saw his own darkness with compassion. And I feel that it was for the first time ever. And then, he's going to meet up with the next ghost. And I'm just giving you a couple of examples from the story because I really would like you to pursue this independently of this, but this is very lovely. He goes with the ghost of Christmas present. And here, the ghost is going to take him into particular homes. And he's going to go into Bob Cratchit's home. He's going to go into his nephew Freddie's home. He's going to go into some others. But there's critical things that I observed when he was in this home. Number one, I'm going to say that in both families there was love and joy and fulfillment and sharing and caring in both homes. But interestingly, all that had to happen was the mention of Ebenezer Scrooge's name and a pall fell over both households. One of them went silent. Really, it took him about 5 minutes to get happy again. The other, the mention of his name in Freddie's house is going to have everybody going, yeah, right. But once again, Freddie, who is really a beacon of light in all this, refuses to badmouth his uncle and instead has also a compassionate perspective. So once again, cause and effect. The cause, choosing the wrong mind, choosing the darkness. The effect on these individual bodies that represent one mind. The impact was so negative that Scrooge was having on them. And then Scrooge saw Tiny Tim. And Tiny Tim, Bob Cratchit's little son, was physically deformed. And here is where Scrooge, most likely because he was able to look at himself, who was emotionally deformed in Christmas past, and feel a compassion for that little boy, was able to look at Tiny Tim in his physical deformation and feel perhaps feelings that he had never experienced prior to looking at himself. And then when we go to the ghost of the Christmas yet to come, it was really interesting because this ghost brought him basically to his own business site, and he's wondering, he's seeing little vignettes, people that have stolen, people that are talking about, well, who's going to grieve this person? Oh, if you offer a free lunch, okay, I'll show up. He recognized all the people. It wasn't until much later that he realized there was just nobody there that cared, that grieved for anything about this man. And it left him destitute, but not as destitute as when the ghost of Christmas yet to come, the ghost of the future, very surely showed him that little Tiny Tim was gone. He wasn't there anymore. And the impact on Scrooge was just enormous, And literally, he will then go to sleep. Now remember, all of this, which according to Jacob would be taking place on back-to-back evenings, really is one Christmas Eve, one Christmas Eve. And I believe that he is left with the prospect of waking up and wanting to be a different man, having the opportunity to choose again, and to choose again, this time, choose the mind of light, the mind of spirit. Well, I just have to say that this journey really felt like our journey, the opening up, the embracing, the going for the right mind. And I was so dazzled by descriptions of him the next day, Christmas Day. And I wanted to share a couple of the little readings from the book I just finished because I loved it. All right, so he got dressed in his best and he left his house. And here's the paragraph, one little paragraph. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. They made him so happy. It says he went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro, and patted children on the head, and questioned beggars, and looked down into the kitchens of houses, and up to the windows, and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything, could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. Now, he passed the house a dozen times. He was, nervous, shy, if you will. And then he had the courage to go up and knock. And there he was, and he was welcomed with open arms. "Fred," said Scrooge. Scrooge said, "It was a wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness." And I'll tell you, he sent a big old goose to Bob Cratchit's house. And the next day, he was so hoping that Bob Cratchit would be late the day after Christmas. His plan needed for Bob Cratchit to be late. And he was. Bob Cratchit was, I think, 45 minutes late. And Scrooge started off being like tough and harsh. And then he melted. And he increased his pay. And he was a happy man. And I have to say, there was something that I read in here that really made me think it was so nice. Where is it? All right. He was aware that forever and always that there were people who made fun of him because his change was so profound. And I loved how it said that Scrooge knew that there would always be people that would do that. But, so what? Just go on and be joyful. So, in the aftermath, he became like another father to Tiny Tim. And in most of the stage productions, he ends up with Tiny Tim, and Tiny Tim gives his blessing on the world. That's not the way that it was in the book. But in the book, it did say that he became another father. And so Tiny Tim didn't die the way he was expected to die within a short period of time. And it's all kind of beautiful. So anyway, I just want to say that there's always that chance, there's always another opportunity to choose again, to see peace and feel peace instead of rage and anger. And I think that his journey, Ebenezer Scrooge's journey, is really all of our journeys. And so thank you for being with me. And I'm wishing you a very Merry Christmas. I'll be back.